Accepting the award for SCS Global Services is Dr. Stanley Rhodes, founder, president, and CEO, and colleagues. Congratulations.
Well, we want to thank you very much for this award. It's quite an honor. We're not a well-known company, but we've been around for about 32 years. You know, we sort of have been sort of the, you might say, the forefront or the sort of the firing line of sustainability, because we want to differentiate PR from the real sustainable initiatives that are going on, because rewarding true sustainability is very important because companies now look towards that as a very important part of their corporate culture and corporate goals. So we have to make sure that those goals are realistic and honest. But being on the forefront of sustainability these days is a little difficult to maybe sort of get your arms around. I don't know if all of you have been keeping track of the news. We get paid to do that, so we get involved in very detailed analysis. The planet has been warming up for about 150 years and has reached about 0.8 degrees Celsius. And that's about 10% too hot. And you've probably noticed over the years that there's reports of increasing drought, increasing intensity of storms. But what happened over the last 2 years is really a shock to almost everyone that I've worked with for over 10 years. So over the last 2 years, the temperatures have increased 50%. So it took 150 years of gradual heat, and then over the last 2 years, the temperatures just went through the roof. Now, everybody thought that was El Nino, and that turned out not to be the case. It only accounts for about 20% of what we now know. So we're in a nonlinear rise in temperature. And what happened over the last 2 years probably isn't that well known to the general public. Some of it you may know. Super typhoons hit the Philippines at 200 miles an hour, obliterating everything in its path. You've all seen these horrible fires in Alberta. Those are not natural. The fire season is almost twice as long as it used to be. Dr. Rubies has been the head of our forestry operation for 23 years. He's walked those forests. Those forests were stable. Now they're not. They're going to burn to the ground. Millions of acres are going to burn to the ground. So at 1.2 degrees, we are reaching a climax, and the Earth is trying to talk to us, I think. But what is most important is the things you may not be familiar with, what's going on over the last 2 years. It turns out all the coral reefs on this planet are dying, disintegrating, and being eliminated. Now, you may not realize what their importance is, but they house 50% of all living biological systems in the oceans. And they're gone. In 2 years, it's gone. Can you imagine that? We're here now, and we just lost the coral reef system of our planet. And what's more troubling to me is that the oceans are so hot now that the amount of oxygen that the creatures live in the ocean is only 2%. We get around on 20%. But these oceans are so hot now that oxygen is boiling off. And scientists tell us within 10 years, 2/3 of the Pacific Ocean will be devoid of all life, suffocated. Suffocated. They told us, told me, that the Arctic wouldn't melt for another 50 years, and it's going to melt completely this year. So we're at 1.2 degrees. All the treaty obligations are talking about 2 degrees. Can you imagine what the world would be like at 2 degrees if we're hitting the wall at 1.2 degrees? You just have to look at India today. They're down to the last 12% of their aquifers, their groundwater aquifers. They haven't had a monsoon rain in 2 years. You got 1 billion people running out of water now, not in 35 years. So one of our goals has been to try to make sense of all this. Are we heading in the right direction? 170 countries got together in Paris, signed an agreement. What does that agreement mean? In practice, that means that they will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 5% in 2100. It will make no difference in temperature rise. We will hit 4 degrees if that's what they accomplish. That small little marginal improvement will cost $13 trillion, $13 trillion, and will not accomplish a great deal. You have the World Resource Institute and a number of others, the state of California, and all of these institutions are using metrics, accounting principles, that's what we get paid to study, that are in fact 28 years out of date. And being 28 years out of date, the climate scientists told all of these bodies that when you invest using these metrics and use mitigation projects based on these accounting principles, it won't do the job. It can't do the job theoretically. But they went ahead and did it anyhow. So we have a situation today where we are faced with a